Alrighty, here we are. The last lesson of Chapter 5, Lesson 4. It's on immigration. So, let's continue on, shall we? After the Spanish-American War, Florida's population just grew. Jobs and land attracted many people here to Florida. Many future Floridians came from island nations, from in and around the Caribbean. The Caribbean lies to the south of Florida. One such nation was Cuba. We know that in the early 1900s, Cubans were already living in Key West and Tampa. We just read about that in Lesson 3. A few Cubans started moving to the city of Miami. Immigrants also moved from the Bahamas. The Bahamas are islands that are located southeast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. The Bahamas are part of the Caribbean community as well. Key West already had a number of Bahamian immigrants. Many worked as sponge divers. They hunted for beds of sponges in the ocean. Plain and simple. They're sponge divers. Other divers worked as salvagers. Here we go, an important vocabulary word. A salvager is someone who finds and resells or reuses items. Bahamian salvagers looked for goods in shipwrecks. We just learned that the United States ship Maine sunk in Cuba. So there had to be other naval vessels in the Keys that had also sunk. After Miami was founded in 1896, many Bahamians moved there. They worked on the railroad and the citrus groves in the city's growing tourist industry. So here on 166, you do have a question. It is a sequence question with 2 answers that you'll need to fill in. Write the missing places in the blanks. The first place the Bahamian immigrants settled in Florida was, fill in the blank, and then later many settled in, fill in the blank. Then on 167, immigrants from Europe started to come to Florida in the late 1800s. Many came to find jobs. For example, some immigrants from Greece moved to Tarpon Springs on the Gulf Coast. They came to work in the area's sponge industry. Well, we know the Bahamians are diving for them, so they would send them to Tampa, and the Greeks would work in the industry in Tampa. Other immigrants, such as the Slavic and the Czech people from Eastern Europe, came to farm the land. The Slavic started a farming town of Slavia near Orlando. In 1911, they grew celery as a cash crop. There's that key word again, that vocabulary word from the Chapter 4. Cash crop. In the 1920s, the Czech families founded Masaryk town. This is a farming community, became known as the egg capital of Florida. Coming from other states, people also migrated to Florida from other states. They outnumbered people coming from other countries. In the late 1800s, people from Georgia and Alabama settled in rural parts of Florida. They farmed and raised citrus or cattle. People also came from states farther north and west. For example, many people of the Jewish faith came from New York. Like many others, they came in search of economic opportunity. Many of them settled in Miami. And then in the early 1900s, Governor Broward was draining the Everglades to create new land. Cities like Miami could grow on this new land. Other land projects were also changing South Florida. One was Carl Fisher. On a swampy island east of Miami, Fisher created a city. His workers dredged Biscayne Bay and filled the marshes. Here's a vocabulary word. To dredge is to dig at the bottom of a body of water. They would cut down trees and brought in fresh soil. They built streets, sidewalks, hotels, and gardens. In 1916, the new city was called Miami Beach. Other developers followed. They built roads and bridges. Some built whole communities. More people and businesses came to the area. Urbanization was happening in South Florida. Urbanization is what happens when a city grows beyond its original borders. Okay, I underlined the definition for you right there. Florida's population began to grow quickly. Between 1900 and 1920, the state's population almost doubled. By 1920, nearly 1 million people lived in Florida. So on 169, you do have 3 questions. Question number 3, cause and effect. Florida's population grew between 1860 and 1920. Write each group what they did and help cause that. Question 4 is a sequence question. Which of these events helped first Florida's population pass 500,000 or the funding of Miami? The founding of Miami. Number 5, to make you think. Many immigrants are coming to Florida. How does your family's successful orange growing business provide economic opportunity to them? Still, you're in the early 1900s to write this question. So with the stop, wait, and go, if you need help, write it down so that we can talk about it. Got a question? Write it down so you can ask me. What do you now know? Okay, this has been all 4 lessons here of Chapter 5. Next, you'll be completing your study guide. Once your study guide is completed, you'll be showing that to me so that you can go ahead and start your Chapter 4 test.